Back in 1987, Taito released Darius, the first of several games to come in his well-loved series of arcade horizontal shoot-'em-ups. Originally presented in the arcade as a panoramic widescreen ratio, which really gave the player some truly awesome visuals in its day. A very similar style to Taito's big arcade hit from the previous year with the Ninja Warriors, which I actually covered in this series just a little while back. Originally, the arcade game consisted of 3 screens to totally immerse the player. We all know that the universe of games in this genre are practically infinite, but when Darius was released originally, it was a little different. I mean, you had a few major standout shooters in this style, such as IREM's epic R-Type, which actually released the same year as this game, as well as the earlier release of Gradius, which came out in 1985. But it's not every horizontal shoot-'em-up game that presented itself as visually stunning as this game did. Something else which set this game apart from the other games in this style was something I like to call the outrun approach, in that rather than the game being a linear game, we can actually choose the paths to take for the end of each stage. These are known as zones, but before choosing a route we have to take on a boss first. The aim of Darius, or at least this first game in the series, is a case of controlling a starship known as Silverhawk and to ultimately destroy an empire known as Belzar before they totally eradicate planet Darius, hence this game's name. Darius looks very different to most other shoot-'em-ups in that enemies are based around sea creatures, but of course in a mechanical form, and the intricate detail with such a beautiful display for this game truly looks stunning. We of course can collect a plethora of different weapons to take down enemies and bosses, and you'll need some decent weaponry. Darius is a notoriously tough game to play. Anyways, we have of course got several different ports for Darius to get through in this video, some named differently but all essentially arcade ports of this game. So today we are ranking from worst to best the best home conversion of Taito's awesome side-scrolling shoot-'em-up Darius. Now, if you were surprised to see that the Sinclair ZX Spectrum got a port of Darius, honestly, you aren't alone. In fact, just like a couple of other ports of Darius in this video, you'll notice that this version isn't just named as Darius either, but as Darius Plus. So how did this Spectrum game come to be? Well, the Edge has in the development team and publishers got lucky with a license directly from Taito produced Western ports of the game. Taito had no involvement whatsoever in the production of it, but I would imagine that they wouldn't have been too impressed with this port. The Edge released this one a couple of years after the arcade game arrived, which was in 1989. As you can see, this version contains our starship as well as plenty of mechanical sea creatures. That's all good and well, but the real issue with this game is that these are all just so large in comparison to the gameplay area, which is relatively small, and trust me, this small gameplay field gets extremely full at times, and combined with the scenery, we really don't have a great deal of maneuver room to avoid bullets as well as these robot creatures who are out to take over the planet of Darius. What makes this even more frustrating is that these mainly approach from behind, and they come in waves. It is totally relentless. Not only do we need to avoid these waves, but also avoid hitting bullets coming from all directions. This is a serious task, and you will explode very easily avoiding everything going on. It's a very strange way to design this game. The arcade game is of course miniature compared to everything here, which is too oversized. If this was toned down and made to be easy to play, then there wouldn't be much of an issue here. We can collect power-ups which do admittedly offer some cool weapons such as laser beams, but before you know it, you are wiped out and we lose those awesome power-ups. The opening is very nice as well as the zone map display, but everything else is just fairly bad and very awkward to play. Bear in mind, this was for the Spectrum 48 and 128K computers, but even playing the 128K version, we have no music either, just very uninspiring sound effects, and this is a real big shame. Knowing that the Edge also developed the Atari ST version was a little nerve-wracking. I was praying that this wasn't another case of oversized sprites in a small playing area. As luck would have it, the Atari ST's port wasn't as bad. In fact, if it wasn't for its extremely bad frame rates, this could have been a fairly decent shooter. So of course this 1989 port for the ST looks nice. I mean, granted, there is better looking ST games out there, but from jumping over from the Spectrum's version to this version, this was a massive super upgrade regardless of the frame rates. Now, to say that sprite designs here are massive isn't to say that they are good in size neither. These are still large enough to annoy you, and the enemies come in their hordes from all directions here too. The more sprites that come on screen, the slower the game gets, and the more frustrating it is to shoot at enemies. Now, rumour has it that you could actually play Darius Plus for the Atari Falcon or Mega STE with a patched version of this game. But of course, in the context and rules of these arcade ports videos, these need to be ranked fairly in how they were intended to be played at the time. We have a few different options to adjust if we want to before the game starts. We have a skill level as well as the option for music and sound effects. Truth be told, if you request music and sound effects simultaneously, you will barely even hear the music, as the sound effects will utterly drown out the music altogether. I mean, really, there isn't really much else I could say about the Atari ST's version of this game. It just needed to be calmed down with its influx of enemy sprites, as the Atari ST seriously can't handle everything it wants going on in this game. I would also say that once we get to the first boss in Zone A, although this is a really nicely designed piece of art, it really is nothing like the fish that we see in the arcade version of Darius at this point. In fact, this is the design from Zone B. But having said that, this is maybe why the game is titled with a plus, meaning that it's superior to the source material. Who knows? Next up, we have the Atari ST's big rival, the Commodore Amiga. Now, this is almost the same game, as far as visuals are concerned anyways. Of course, as you will see, the Amiga's 1989 port by the Edge performs much better than the ST's version, although this is far from perfect, and I know for a fact that the Amiga could actually perform better with this with several sprites at once. So yeah, the Amiga game definitely performs better, although could be smoother. The size and the sprites are virtually the same as the Atari ST's. With this Amiga version, we don't appear to have an options menu or even a prompt here for one of these. We press fire button, we see a map of the zones, and we are off. Now, I will say for this version that the music is light years ahead, as well as the sound effects. For example, I am blasting away at mechanical fish. I can still hear the music. Something else that is interesting here is that we do actually get a mechanical giant fish at the end of Zone A. I really wasn't expecting this, so I would say in that regard the Amiga port is a little more faithful. Sure, the size is huge compared to the arcade game, but this was after all being developed for a 4x3 display at the time, and so to create the arcade size of that panoramic widescreen effect would be admittedly a little bit of a difficult task. Just like the Spectrum and Atari ST's version of this game, it is particularly difficult. It really is a combination of jagged movements and sprites that could really be smaller in size on all three of these platforms. These microcomputer versions are very capable of horizontal shoot-em-ups, and good ones too. I just truly do think that either this game was a quick cash grab or the Edge wasn't great at game development. Either way, out of all three of these microcomputer versions, this is likely the best version. Rather than being stylized with the mathematical plus symbol, the PC Engine's version is known as Darius Plus, in which the plus is actually spelt here. We have arrived at the point in this video with a dramatic shift in quality, and that's very simply because this 1990 game by NEC Avenue was developed by a different team altogether. This was developed by Bits Laboratory. You can see here that this is a major upgrade from everything else so far in this video. I won't lie, this game is ridiculously tough. And I think that's partly because the game is designed very much like the arcade game, and so the incoming enemy attack sprites are pretty much the same. The issue is that of course when this released, the standard ratio for gaming consoles was 4:3, and so we don't get much time to react to oncoming waves of attacking enemies. This is definitely a version that you would do much better with by memorizing everything. You'll notice as the game starts up, there is no options. And many PC Engine games actually get these. However, we can activate a cheat here which makes it a slight more manageable. By pressing down on buttons 1 and 2 and then pressing the select button, we get a game level select screen. And once this is activated, when we get a game over, we can just press the select button at the start screen to continue from the level that we had a game over with. And of course, the level select option is to alter the difficulty level of this game, which can come in handy. I won't lie, even on the easiest modes, this game is damn tough. Probably one of the most toughest horizontal shoot-em-ups I've ever played. And you seriously need all the help you can get with this game if you want to see more of it. One of the lovely parts of it is that yes, it remains faithful to the source material and those irritating frame drops don't exist here. Neither does the wave of enemies coming in from behind. It's almost like Bits Laboratory knew how the game played originally. Sadly though, there was no 2-player option with this version. The idea of emulating games from yesteryear on your modern day computer or portable device. Maybe you hate the thought of loading times of your favourite games and prefer to watch commentary videos or anything else retro related. Just Jamie Retro Realm is the ultimate channel for anybody who loves games from the golden age of arcade to home microcomputers as well as the console generations. From the 1970s to the 2000s, then this channel will have something that you'll love, including themed video series as well as beginner's guides from standalone emulators to more complex front-end emulation system guides. This channel even supports and showcases modern day games for retro platforms, or more commonly known as homebrew games, as well as offering reviews for physical hardware. Just Jamie will absolutely have something for any preference, and the video uploads are also very frequent too. So if you want a retro gaming channel which appreciates everything from the Sinclair ZX80 to the modern day era arcade games and love the idea of discovering new games from yesteryear, hit subscribe and set notifications so you don't miss out on almost daily content. This is the PC Engine CD conversion. Now you'll likely think this looks like the same as the standard PC Engine HuCard version. Well, it pretty much is, although this edition features CD quality music, which was the actual music ripped from the original arcade game itself. And there is no denying that it sounds nicer than the standard PC Engine version. The reason this version is known as Super Darius is that it contains more bosses than the arcade game did. And that's not to say though that this isn't a port of the source material, because it is. NEC Avenue likely thought they had spare room to play with prior to exclusively releasing this for Japan, and so decided to add some new bosses in order to sell the game. In terms of difficulty level, this CD version is often said to be slightly easier than the standard PC Engine HuCard version. For me, they're both fairly on par. In other words, both completely unforgiving games, which might make you cry. So we have a couple of honourable mentions here. First up, we got this 1991 Japanese release entitled Darius Sagaya. Now, not strictly a port as such, but this features parts of Darius 1 and 2, and since Taito developed it and published it themselves, this was at least worth a mention here. This is Darius R. Again, much like the original Game Boy game, this was a little bit of a mishmash game. Although the first stage is entirely based around the arcade game itself, one thing to note with this version is the superior resolution. Although the camera does tend to follow Silverhawk around as we're playing, the wider field of view here is really good. Darius R again released exclusively for Japan back in 2002. In first place then, this is something I've never done before with these arcade ports videos. I have placed a modern port of Darius here, which was actually included with the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis Mini. And although this was released back in 2019, it was actually developed by Sega and obviously released by them too. It was built from scratch to be an exclusive unlockable game. It is just too much of a great port not to rank it in this video. The reason simply being is that this version is one of the easiest of Darius you'll likely ever play. I mean, although the PC Engine game looks really nice, the difficulty level was just clearly insane, even with using cheats to make it easier. The beauty with this release is that we don't have to use cheats to access easier or even harder modes. As soon as Darius boots up, we can either start the game or select options, which gives us a couple of ways to make the gameplay easier. Now, as for the gameplay itself, although this is still a fairly tough game, even with the easy difficulty level, I did manage to get through Zone A completely without getting a game over at all. The game looks great, and that intricate fine detail of what kind of looks like Jupiter behind us as we're taking on the first boss looks incredible. And the music is also emulated nicely here too. It's got that typical Mega Drive twang sound, which sounds much closer to the arcade game. To make things even greater with this Mega Drive version is that we can also access auto fire through the menu settings, which makes the game a little more enjoyable to play rather than constantly tapping on the fire button. Everything here was developed really nicely by Sega. If this version didn't exist, then I would likely have put PC Engine CD's version here in first place. Darius was a seriously tough game to begin with. Sadly, the home computer ports were fairly bad, and there's also a Commodore 64 version in development too at the time, but it was actually cancelled. Although you can find that on games that weren't 64, a story about what happens with the production of the C64 game. You can even download the used assets of the C64 version too over on games that weren't 64. But anyways, that's what ranking every version today of Darius. Do you agree with my harsh criticisms with the microcomputer versions? Which version do you think deserved to be in top spot? Anyways, thanks for watching, and if you're new to this series for ranking the arcade ports, check out the comments. I'm going to put a link to my playlist of everything I've covered so far in this series. Anyways, again, thanks for watching, and until next time, stay retro.